Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Reese number 320D. This is an automatic door bottom. It's an automatic door bottom with a sponge neoprene and pile insert in a dark bronze anodized aluminum finish. This is Reese. This is an automatic door bottom, and I'll mention in this video a number of times that automatic door bottoms are elegant ways by which to seal the bottom of the door. You'll see your pile that's here. You'll see your sponge neoprene. Sponge neoprene is appropriate for acoustical attenuation. Sponge, it's spongy. It has, all those air pockets in it. You'll notice that there is a pile here as well. That's going to help, of course, with the process of sealing the door. You'll notice that this side has this screw hanging out. We're going to talk about that. And you'll notice the other side does not have that at all. Let's go over the generic description of what an automatic door bottom is. It is a unit that, in my opinion, quite elegantly seals the bottom of a door, doing so in a way that is conducive with it being operational or automatic only when the door is in the closing cycle or closed position. That function of hardware permits you to work within reality in terms of the space, the world we live in, the space, the universe that we live in. Automatic door bottoms, because they tuck up into the housing of the unit itself, permit you to seal your door but then have a rug behind the door, or to have your child's shoe left behind the door so that when you open the door, the rubber part, the seal part, is tucked up into the housing. So it allows you to contend with, the cards that we were dealt, so to speak. You want to obviously seal that door as tight as possible, but you want to be able to open the door and swing the door over a floor condition. It might be a rug. Again, it might be a shoe as well. And I'm of the opinion that they do so, and it's very elegant, in my opinion, the way that they do so, keeping it nice and sealed at the bottom of the door. This 320 specifically from Reese is a surface-mounted unit, that it is in the dark bronze finish, as you can see. Reese's dark bronze is a very nice finish, certainly far lighter than many others. This would be, in my opinion, incredibly compatible with your oil-rubbed bronze finishes. Some dark bronze from a lot of people end up being a lot darker, akin to black even in some cases. And that works because a lot of aluminum storefront is certainly much darker. And you're not going to find aluminum storefront this golden brown, a very dark, rich brown like this. However, when it comes to matching oil-rubbed bronze hardware, I would argue that this is going to be a lot nicer finish match than your really dark anodized finishes from other manufacturers. This is surface mounted. We'll talk about that in a moment. It does have that two-step sort of seal in the sense that it has the sponge neoprene that's going to seal against the sill, but it will also help retard the transmission of energy getting in, up, around, down, and back out with that pile that's there. Okay, I would want that pile to be as close to the exterior as possible, and that would really render it a handed piece of hardware. This model is also fire rated, which means it's listed, it's appropriate, can be used on fire rated doors. It is also sound seal rated, so and that's where the sponge neoprene comes in. Neoprene is really two different types, and I'm no expert, but neoprene is two different types. There's sponge, hollow pockets, good for sound attenuation. Then there's open cell, and then there's closed cell. Closed cell would be like a wetsuit or like car tire. Very waterproof, incredibly waterproof. Would not carry the same sort of sound attenuation that sponge or open cell would. So they're going for a sound seal rating on this as well. There is an image down below this video that will allow us to look at the dimensional property of the item. and they say about 2 1/8 inch overall height, and I'd argue that that would be accurate, with a thickness of just heavy on 1/2 of an inch. I'd argue would be good there. And I was just about saying about the handing of it. I would personally, as they show on the unit, with the pile to the outside, that would render this a handed type of unit. Okay, so in this sort of orientation, I'm going to say that this is going to be a left-hand door. And here's what I mean. This is the hinge side. I kind of buried the lead, but this side with the screw is the hinge side. Surface mount have to be mounted on the exterior push side. The pile, if the pile is going to be on the outside, the hinges would have to be here, and that door would have to swing in this way, making it a left hand. There is an attribute for the handing that's there for you to select. And there is a handing chart down below for your review. These are only mounted on the exterior. You know, you can, they have to be mounted on the push side, not necessarily the exterior. If you had a door that swung out, this would be mounted on the inside, which would really not be ideal, in my opinion, because you really want that line of defense to be on the outside. But if you were doing acoustical stuff, applications, like you would in an interior application, you know, you'll mount it on the push side, and we're going to talk about the different ways that door bottoms will mount through this video as well. So the 320, and there's a link below this video to a document called Product Brochure. That will allow you to review their page from the manufacturer on their door bottoms. And the 320 is listed there in a C finish, which is clear anodized aluminum, in a D finish, which is the dark bronze, and then a G finish for gold anodized. You can see there that they're showing you what the cross section looks like on a, that would be a right hand door that they're technically showing you there. Right hand side would be appropriate. Minimum size 24 inch, maximum size 48 inch with a maximum drop of 3/4 inch. Maximum drop is going to be 3/4 inch. That means from where you place this on the door when it's in the retracted position down to what it's going to seal against cannot exceed 3/4 inch. If you're a little more than that, you know, sometimes I've told people, well, maybe tug it down a little bit on the door. There are models that go more than 3/4 inch drop that are available on the market. But we would have to assist you with another manufacturer. And you know, and 3/4 is ubiquitous. 3/4 is standard for the maximum drop. There, 1 inch is available. That's out there. But if you've got that much gap, you know, a door bottom is going to help. But there's still a 1 inch gap. So maybe that's why 3/4 is the maximum drop that you're really going to see. This would be, in my opinion, considered a standard commercial duty. That 321 that's there is going to be considered residential or light duty commercial or residential. I would avoid that one only because it doesn't give you the added feature of that sponge neoprene and the pile, and it being a far more robust mechanism on the inside in terms of the spring. If you were looking for the biggest, heaviest, you'd look at the 330 or possibly the 521. The 521 is where you're really going to be getting into some acoustic rated material. Reese gets into STC rated sound transmission control material. That 521 is a piece that you're going to use if you're trying to hit a certain STC rating. Okay, a very high quality item. STC 46 is mentioned on that product brochure. If this is residential, I might encourage you to avoid these heavy duty ones because they're big, they're loud, they have a very stiff spring inside of them, so I may avoid that. The neoprene that you see there is going to be really good for a reasonably smooth surface. If you have a carpet sort of application or an incredibly irregular surface, I would go with the 933. The bristle that comes down is going to shoot into the irregular surface very well. That bar that's there is also going to act as a security vehicle as well to prevent someone from just sticking their fingers under the door And while you could sure destroy the hardware by putting something on there and forcing it up, you could also kick the door in. So it's not meant to be vandal or break-in proof. It's just meant to give you a solid seal of that aluminum drop bar that's there. So you can see all the different models on page 1. They're all surface mount. Page 2 shows you the recess or mortise mounted. There are 3 primary types. Surface mount, then you can take a surface mount and recess it so that it's flush with the face of the door. Then you can mortise it into the bottom of the door. We are dealing here only with the surface mount. Mortise would be very appropriate in a wood door application where you don't want to see the hardware, or when you have an application that will not permit you adding this to the face of the door, like in a handicap mandatory application, that having a door bottom installed on the door and projecting off would violate the ADA guidelines for handicap compliant openings. You'd need to mortise that into the door, or you'd need to recess your unit to the door. You could literally route the face of that door all the way down to the bottom and make this unit flush. That would be a really elegant way to go. Non-rated though, you're not going to do that preparation into a fire rated door in the field. You'd order it that way. But you could mortise that completely flush. Now the only downside with that, and we're going to talk about the end cap later on, is that there is an end cap that's going to go and dress this off. You'd have to kind of make your own end cap. Something flat or flush would be really nice. But surface mounted is the one we're dealing with. The type of mount that you order is directly related to how you order the net size. And this is going to dovetail into the installation instructions. And let's pull that up. They are included on a little slip of paper that's there, but they are linked to down below this video so that you can review that. So first of all, it says 12 to 24 inch cannot be trimmed, so apparently they can make them smaller than 24 inch. 36, 42, and 48 inch units can be trimmed 3 inch, and all other sizes can be trimmed 1 inch. I would encourage you to order it the size you need, because if you were doing a 32 inch door and you can only trim that technically up to 1 inch, it's very likely that you will not be able to trim it enough, because these are mounted on the push side. We don't care the net door width. We don't care the frame opening. All we really care about is when you're standing on the door on the push side, which is probably the outside if it's a residential door. The door is unlocked and you've closed it. You've measured between the stops. And that's the dimension that's important. Less 1/8 of an inch is your order size. So if you had a 32 inch door and your stops were 1/2 inch and you needed to take 32, well, let's say your wood door was 32 inch, which means your frame is probably 32 1/4. Let's say you had 1 inch projection stops. That's going to put you at 31 1/4, less 1/8 is going to be 31 1/8. And that would work if you ordered a 32, but what if you had a 32 inch door, nominal, you had 1/2 inch stops, that puts you at 31 less 1/8, now you're at 30 7/8. Would that work? Probably would. My deep suggestion is that you order the material sized appropriately. Why? Look at the finish that they get on here. A very nice, excellent finish. The cut is perfect. There's no damage to the unit. It's exactly the size that the client ordered it. Exactly. You'll need to do no cutting. Installing this should be literally super simple. 2 holes pre-drilled, actually 3 holes pre-drilled, attach it, test it, adjust it, you're done. You might not be in a position to measure the unit. You might have to order them, but be mindful that you're going to have to get awfully close. If you've got 3-foot doors, order them 3 foot. You know you can trim them down 3 inch. My suggestion would be that you take the time and measure them. Let the factory cut them. They're cutting them from long lengths of raw material anyway. They'll obviously take the responsibility for cutting it to the correct size. You don't run the risk of damaging something. So I would really encourage that. I don't like to, it's not going to increase the lead time. It's not going to increase the cost. Order the next longest piece or pieces. Indicate in the comment field the length that you need to have the material made at, and that's just what's going to happen. So an automatic door bottom, before we get into the installation instructions, what we're talking about is that piece of hardware that's going to seal when the door is closed. How does that work? We said earlier that this is the hinge side and that's the lock side. So what happens is this. After you get the unit mounted to the door, and we'll go over the installation instructions, when you go to close the door, what's going to happen is this screw is going to make contact with the stop of the frame. It's going to literally have direct contact with the frame, and as you continue to push the door closed, this has nowhere to go but in. And when that goes in, that drops down. Now, it's intended to drop down unevenly like that. That's by design. Here's what actually happens. When that goes in, I'm going to do it on my desktop here. When that goes in, what happens is that makes contact with the sill, forcing it to drop down the other side. And it's a very stiff spring in there. I can barely push it in. The bolt gets compressed. The flat spring bellies, forces the bottom to drop. It drops like this, and then this. Now, that's by design. It's not broken. I've had people call me and say, hey, it doesn't drop evenly. No, it's not supposed to. And when you think it through after hearing why, you're like, oh, yes, of course, it has to be that way. So when the door closes, it's going to drop on the hinge side. Over on the hinge side, you're basically closed, right? But over on the lock side, you could be 1, 2, 3 inches still ajar. As you continue to close, it drops more and more and more. You don't want it to drop evenly, because what's going to happen out here? The last 3, 2, 1 inches, you're just dragging the seal across the floor. That's not elegant. So that's why they drop literally uneven like that. And the advantage is it will help seal against a uneven floor, provided you're kind of going away towards the hinge. It can drop and then it can seal. It's not going to be so good dropping and then having to reach too far, because you'd really have to compress the other side. Because what you want is, as soon as you open the door, you want it to start coming back up into the housing. So again, you're not dragging this extended bottom across the floor before it snaps up. Now, that sound that you heard, if I've sold 10,000 of these, I've heard twice someone's complained about the sound, and you're going to hear it. When you open the door, the spring gets retracted, and it comes back up into the housing. It's the nature of the beast. I've had one person absolutely refuse it as a failure, and I thought, well, you know, I never thought of it, that it did make a sound, because it sure does make a sound. You can hear it. But I thought, my gosh, when the door is closed, the advantages of it being sealed automatically, in my opinion, far outweigh the disadvantage of hearing that clank sound when it opens. I'm aware of it, so I mention it. There are other models that do a very good job at helping deaden that. And there is really no concept or principle of that from Reese. If you have an application where you need to absolutely muffle that sound as much as possible, which will never be zero in terms of acoustic energy, reach out to us and we will help you with that. So that's how these work. They drop unevenly. They're supposed to. They hit contact with the sill and then they drop like that. Really great concept. The other elegant reason why you should consider this, not only it snaps back up so you can glide over the top of a rug or shoes or whatever, but it's not dragging. All it's doing is pushing. You're not going to wear that seal out prematurely. So very durable material. Now let's move to the installation instructions. Cut the door bottom 3/16 shorter than the distance between the stops. I earlier said 1/8 of an inch. They're saying 3/16. Okay, fine. Do not cut anything from the end with the adjustment screw. Don't cut this side. Only cut this side. Loosen adjustment screw to give complete seal when the door is closed. Maximum drop 3/4 inch. You will take this bolt. You will draw it in with your screwdriver clockwise to bring it in when you first install it. The amount of projection is directly related to the amount of drop. You absolutely will want to draw that in, let it stick out 1/8 of an inch. Close the door and test it. Get down and look. Come back up, open the door, rotate it out a turn or two, test it again. You only want contact. Force is a bad thing. If you've got undue force, you've got to then open your door significantly before that flat spring relaxes to the point where the drop bar bottom is going to start to snap back up into the housing. So just contact, nothing beyond that. This door is designed to have the opening bar move sideways about 1/8 of an inch to 3/16 towards the swinging end of the door. The extra neoprene at the hinged end of the bar fills that space. Do not trim the neoprene. You're going to have to trim the neoprene a little bit. What they're saying is, you notice that this is sucked into the housing ever so slightly. But when you drop that, it literally not only does this, then this, it actually does that, so that it moves laterally towards the strike side a bit. You're going to want a bit of this hanging off, so that when you are in the, in the hinge side, you're going to want a bit of this hanging off because it's going to scooch towards the lock side a little bit. So a small amount of this needs to project off the edge of the housing. Okay? And you'll notice that it stands a little proud on this side. It's not quite flush. It's a bit proud. And over here it's a bit sucked in. Okay, that's by design. The door bottom drops at the hinged end first, so the swinging side of the door can swing freely. Pile insert prevents air passing up over the operating bar. We discussed that. These are reversible, left or right hand. I've never had anyone pull that pile out and reverse it. And it's probably, I would not recommend that you do that, because that bar is probably crimped to keep the pile from sliding. Simply order it the right way. At the end of the day, if you've got it on the wrong side of the door, I really don't think it's something worth losing sleep over. Operate the door several times. Step 8, to ensure that the automatic door bottom is properly adjusted so as to not inhibit the door from self-closing and latching. That's obviously cardinal rule number 1 and 2 when it comes to a fire-rated door. Installing this cannot interfere with the self-closing nature of your door and the self-latching nature of your door. Things to look for the 320 installation. Interesting. When trimmed down, a burr was left. When trimmed to length, make sure that there are no burrs or chips that have gotten into the case. Yeah, you don't want that at all, because what will happen is it may not operate properly. You need to file that. That needs to move smoothly on the inside of there. Case is not collapsed or pinched, so bar can't come down. Bar must move freely. You should be able to have the bar go up and down with your finger. What they're trying to say there is, don't over-tighten these screws. When you crush the case, and you really can't because of how significantly thick this material is, these guys stand alone when it comes to the thickness of their aluminum extrusions. That's Reese. You're not going to crush this, but if it wasn't moving freely, don't over-tighten these screws. You'll also run the chance of stripping the holes out as well. Adjusting screw not hitting jam. Adjusting screw must hit the jam for the door bottom to work properly. If this is sucked in all the way, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not, you'll never drop the bottom down. So you've got to have this making contact. It's got to stick out. Mounting screw not in straight. Mounting screws must be in straight and not pressing against the case. Sure, be mindful. When you are pre-drilling the holes, drill those holes nice and straight. You don't want them moved, and here are the screws, by the way. You want them to be completely nice and flush with your installation. Use a proper fitting drill bit as well. Clearance of the door is not to be greater than 3/4 inch, for sure. Watch so that the bar is not pulled down too far when trimming or looking into the door bottom. Pulling the door bar down too far can stretch the spring and ruin the door bottom, so that it will not work properly. Don't tug on this. There's no reason to tug on that. Automatic works on a pivot system. The adjusting screw hits the hinge side of the door, making the bar come down on the hinge side. When the bar comes in contact with the surface, it pivots the bar so that the latch or strike side of the bar will come down. Make sure automatic is adjusted properly. Again, down, seal, done. No more undue pressure on the spring. Please note, door bottoms are not designed to seal directly on carpet. For best results, door bottoms should seal on a solid surface. The solid surface should be positioned above the level of the floor covering on either side of the door. Door bottoms are field reversible and can be put in semi-mortised sort of applications. Now, everything we had spoken about earlier about how to size the unit, obviously that's going to change if you're going to semi-mortise it. If you're going to recess it flush, then you absolutely care what the net door size is. You don't care the dimension between the stops at all. And that same logic will apply if you're doing a full mortise as well. After you get that, okay, so if you need to have a solid surface. If you've got carpet, go with the brush. But that bar is there so as to give your unit a solid indicator of when to stop dropping, because the brush will just collapse, 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 collapse. That's why that solid bar is there, really, to keep it from collapsing down. This is going to have an end cap, and the end cap is going to be on the strike side of the door, so that you are basically flushing it off so that it looks like that. The hinge side does not have such a cap. You are going to get two very small brad nails for installing that cap to the door, two of them. And then, of course, your screws. So I do feel that automatic door bottoms are very elegant because not only are they long-lasting, because they don't scrape against the floor, but they are going to permit you to overcome obstacles on the inside of the door. And they're going to do so in such a way that really allows you to set it and forget it. And they're very effective. And you'll see them very often in hotel room doors. You'll very often see automatic door bottoms. You may not see them, but they're very often there because they permit the installation of a seal on the bottom of the door for sound attenuation in a handicap compliant, by means of a handicap compliant implementation. A surface mount won't work, but you can recess it or you can mortise it. So it will work, and that makes it elegant as well. I do feel that they're superior from when compared to door sweeps, because if you've got an in-swinging door sweep, where are you going to put that door sweep? On the threshold? And then every time you open the closed door, it's dragging across your material? That's not really elegant. An automatic door bottom allows you to get that barrier right on the outside of the door where you want it. You want to stop the infiltration in its tracks, and that it would be on the push side in most instances. So that's why I think that they're elegant as well, because they're effective. One thing that you could do as well is you could install this in combination with, you know, a sweep on the inside of the door as well. If you wanted to go with belts and suspenders, you could certainly do that. You might have an interior application where the floor can't kind of drop down. You might add another one. I wouldn't really recommend it, but you certainly could. But what I like most about this Reese item is the incredibly high caliber of the quality, the thickness of the aluminum. If you just notice how thick that is, nobody's aluminum is like this. Outrageously durable. It matters because this material is going to be very long lasting. Installing it, once you've got it cut to length, you're going to install it. I would remove the door from the hinges, put it in the flat, attach it, rehang your door, draw that screw in, and then start to test it and back it out accordingly. You don't want too much of this to come out of the housing and damage the unit. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Reese products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. If you have any questions on the Reese, this is their part number 320D, automatic door bottom in a dark bronze finish, or any other Reese product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.